In this video, my goal is to take anybody who's interested and may need help through the process of setting up their Yaesu FT-710 to run PSK. I looked for several videos that were already on YouTube, and none were specific to the software that I was attempting to use. And with computers being different brand by brand and not always working the same, I ran into some issues, and I thought I'd make a video here to maybe help out some of those who may be running into the same thing that I was in trying to set up PSK31 on their computer to run through their Yaesu FT-710. So what we have here, you'll see, is the FT-710 itself. It still has the screen protector on there, and before anybody leaves a comment about that, there's a reason that I leave that on there, and it's because I do not use that screen. What I use, because it is one of the valuable features, I think, about the FT-710, is the ability to put an external monitor, which I use right here. And what this allows me to do is to have a much easier way to see what's going on the screen, and also the ability to hook up a mouse to make my selections and things such as that. So that's the setup that I have here. I have the FT-710 attached to an external monitor with a mouse. So the problem that I was running into, we'll get to now, so stand by. Now, I had loaded several different types of software onto my laptop in order to try and get PSK to work. And I ran into the same problem no matter which software version it was, or application that it was. And the problem was that I could see data coming across the screen, and the signals, and they were good signals, and I could read the what was being transmitted over the air, but I could not transmit and get a signal out. Although it appeared on the waterfall that it was going out, it actually was not. It was not activating the transmit on my radio itself. So let me go through a couple of things that I did in order to make it work. And it may or may not be the same on your computer, just depending on your computer and what it's looking for. But let's just start at the beginning, and we'll go through what I had to do. Okay, first we had the radio settings themselves. There's some options that have to be made and changed within the radio, and the owner's manual is not exactly clear about what to do if you're new to this or not familiar with some of the terminology. So to begin with, the first thing you do is you go to your settings screen right here. And what you'll do first is go to radio settings, and then your mode PSK data, and then mod source. And the factory default for mod source is auto. And what I had to do was to change this to USB, because I was using a USB cable connected to the back of the radio as my interface between the computer and the radio. So mod source has to be USB. And if we look here, there's several options. There's USB, mic, rear, and auto. Auto is the factory default, but what we need is USB. Then down here in the RPTT select box, the factory default there is DAKY. And we'll look at this right here. This is the factory default, DAKY. What I had to do was change mine to DTR. So once that was done, I was finished in this screen. So you go back and then you'll go to your power level. You have to do this right here because we don't run PSK at maximum power. Typically is 50 watts or less. So you see in the upper right hand corner underneath the frequency where it says RF power, and you can use your function knob and you can change your power level, and it should be 50 watts or less once you do that. Then once you have that completed, click on your VFOA box, and typically you'll be using, depending on what band you're in, upper sideband, lower sideband, or something like that. And what you have to do is go in and change that to PSK, since we will be running PSK. And then if you're in, for example, the 20 meter band, you'd set it to the data frequency typically used for PSK, which in this case, I've got it set for 14.070. So with that, let's go look at the computer and what settings we need to change in that. Okay, now I'm going to do my best to make this where you can actually read and tell what I'm doing. But to begin with, I loaded Hamscope. That's the software version that I chose due to its simplicity and being easy to use for me. Your mileage may vary. You may prefer something else, but I'm going to be covering the setup for Hamscope. So once you get Hamscope loaded, you'll have a screen similar to this once you launch it. One other thing to do, let's talk about it prior to this, is your computer must have a driver for a virtual COM port between the FT-710 and the computer. So if you go to the Yaesu website, you can find the driver for the computer that will be needed in this situation. So once you install that driver, you should be able to go to Device Manager. And when you look at Device Manager, you should see something like this. Under ports, COM and LPT, you should see a COM port 5 and a COM port 6 that are labeled as Silicon Labs Dual USB to UART Bridge Enhanced COM port. These are the ports that are used by the radio to computer interface, and that's something that we need to know, COM port 5 and COM port 6. So if you see that, you know that your USB cable, and it's a typical USB cable. Check your owner's manual for the type that's needed, and it'll provide the information. So we're going to close Device Manager, and then we're going to look at the settings that we need to make in the software application to get Hamscope to work. So what we'll do, we go up to Settings and go to General Setup. And once that's open, you can see that under Push to Talk Control Setup, I've changed that to COM 6. I tried COM 5, but that would not work. That would not cause the radio to begin to transmit when you tried to transmit using the Hamscope software. So COM port had to be set to 6, and you may have to try 5 or 6, try 5 and then try 6 if one of them doesn't work with your computer. But with mine, it was COM 6. PTT using, I had to select both under that field. I put a check mark beside the PTT to rig control, and then under rig control setup, I use COM6 radio FT-840. There is not an option for an FT-710 in Hamscope software. I also tried some of the other radios and they did not work, but the FT-840 did work. And then I set the rig baud rate to 38,400. The last thing is the sound card selection can be set to best matching and or default card, and that worked in my case. So those are the things that had to be set in the general setup: the push to talk control, COM6, push to talk using both, and then COM port 6 radio FT-840, and the rig baud rate. So with that, we can close this screen right here. Now there is an option called rig control, and I don't have anything selected in that, and it did not make a difference one way or the other as to whether there was anything populated in that right there. The key was to have the general settings correct that we previously looked at. Now to verify that the changes that I made with the computer and with the radio are what needed to be done for the software to actually work when I try to use Hamscope via PSK. What I do is when I hit the button here to start transmitting, I'll show you what we should see on the radio. So right now I'm going to begin to transmit. And what we'll see here is the busy transmit light turns red. That turning red means that it is in transmit mode. And you see there, it just went off when it was finished transmitting. So that is the way to verify that the radio is actually working. And then you can see in the waterfall right there where our test message, including my call sign, did transmit. So hopefully this will be helpful to anybody out there that's trying to get their software to work so that they can use PSK. The settings are probably going to be similar with other software applications that are available on the internet. I think that the key is being able to set the radio itself to what it's expecting, and then being able to configure the software application to match what we have set the radio for. And by doing that, everything should work okay. So I hope this is helpful to somebody out there. If so, leave a comment below, and